right, good afternoon and welcome to NCIA's Industry Essentials Educational Webinar Series, our premier digital platform featuring a variety of programs to provide you timely, engaging, and essential education when and where you need it most. My name is Brian Gilbert, the events manager here at NCIA, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to another episode in our ongoing NCIA Committee Insights series, this week being hosted by our Marketing and Advertising Committee. If you're just joining us, please be aware we will be conducting Q&A at the conclusion of the presentation. So pose any of those burning questions that you've got burning in your brain to the Q&A board. You can see that button available along the bottom toolbar within the Zoom platform. Even if you don't have any questions to contribute yourself, contribute to the conversation by giving any that are particularly worthwhile a little upvote and sending them to the top of the feed. Now, let's dive into today's session. This afternoon, 4 members of our Marketing and Advertising Committee will take a look at real-world examples of successful advertising from a variety of cannabis businesses in light of how the world has changed drastically in the last 6 weeks, and discuss how your brilliant marketing strategy and messaging may sound completely tone-deaf or even offensive now. Thank you all once again for joining us this afternoon, and a special shout out to the 48 member business companies that are participating today. With that, please enjoy today's session entitled NCIA Committee Insights, Best Practices in Advertising Cannabis Businesses, being moderated by Janine Moss, co-founder at Outfront Solutions. You've got the room, Janine. Take it away. And this is your cue for all the panelists to reactivate your videos.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. So I'm Janine Moss, and I am the chair of NCIA's Marketing and Advertising Committee, which is affectionately known as the MAC. I'm also the co-founder of Outfront Solutions, which is a branding, marketing, and business development firm that's focused on technology and cannabis. This webinar, as Brian just said, was going to be about best practices in general, but the panelists here have made a major pivot to really tell you about what brands are doing communications and marketing right since COVID, the advent of the pandemic, and also the social justice movement. And they're going to give you case studies and lots of ideas and insights about what's working and what's not. So we're going to start with the impact of the pandemic, and then like that timeline, we'll move into the social justice issue and towards the end of this program. Let me tell you a couple things about our presenters. So Dave Grigsby is the Director of Integrated Marketing at Dixie Brands, which is a multi-state operator with a lot of cannabis products. Dixie has taken some amazingly courageous actions as a result of this predicament we find ourselves in, and he's going to explain why and how that happened. Laura Wilkinson is the CEO at Caligrown AFC Products, and she's focused on the dispensary sector, so she'll be talking a lot about that. And while everybody is a marketing expert on this call and will be chiming in regularly, Laura is particularly interested in what makes brands remarkable. Amy is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing in Simplifia, which is a cannabis compliance software, and she is an expert in B2B marketing. But her experience spans all kinds of industries and sectors, so again, she'll be chiming in. She's also the incoming chair of the MAC this year, and NCIA has just announced that they've extended the deadline for application to the committee. So if anybody here is interested in that, I would highly recommend that you take a look, get your application in, and see if you can be part of Amy's team. So we know that you all have a lot of questions. Please use the Q&A button, as Brian mentioned. And I'm going to be watching those questions. And after the presentation, we've reserved time for Q&A. So I'll be moderating that. And without further ado, let's hand it over to Dave Grigsby to discuss the bold moves that he and Dixie have taken.
All right, thanks, Janine. All right, so how have brands adapted their advertising strategy throughout 2020? The role of brands in the industry really has dramatically changed during COVID. The initial stages of the pandemic, during the initial stages of the pandemic, cannabis was deemed an essential business. And that really legitimized both the plant and our industry in the eyes of the consumer and really mainstream media and the mainstream in general. Even as other businesses, small businesses were closed down, cannabis was still, in some respects operating and thriving in many regions. But brands really needed to evolve their marketing strategy during this time and not just focus on their own specific products, but really the needs of the consumer. We realized this was not a time to just sell them products, but rather sell them on how cannabis can help heal and manage conditions that they might be dealing with during this time, like sleep or anxiety, or using cannabis as an aid in exercise to really build their immune system to make them much stronger and able to deal with any medical conditions they might have. This is a really proud moment for the industry. We now had mainstream attention, and it was really exciting to see the industry band together for the progression of us all together as one entity, and really promote the responsible use and the benefits of the plant to all of our communities. But with that, consumer buying habits also evolved. We know the bud tender has always been the gatekeeper to the end consumer, but due to some of the changes in regulation at the retail, at the point of retail, a lot had changed. Consumers were forced to find new ways to educate themselves and make informed buying decisions. We saw a lot of brands turn to new technology solutions, things like SpringBig, which is an SMS text message campaign distribution platform, as well as other online ordering platforms like iHeartJane. iHeartJane is a program that brands were using to link up to live inventory inside actual retail centers. So folks could find the exact product they're looking for, get educated on it, and really be able to go, right to the source to buy the product as opposed to hopping around like they may have in the past to different retail centers. Two brands that I saw doing that really well, Jetty Extracts out in California and Wana Brands, really capitalized on those technologies. And I think it did well for them during this time of the pandemic. So really the key is just to support the shops at all costs. We know that they're the lifeblood of the industry, and they are the ones really, dealing on the front line with some of the impacts of COVID as they're consumer facing. So capitalizing on things like developing curbside menus, giving them brand and mass, making sure your sales staff is nimble and understanding to some of the unique needs that they might have during this time was all super important. Even things like, bringing them lunch or breakfast, just showing that support, letting them know that we're on the same team here and doing whatever we can to really make their lives easier and understand the changes in the consumer buying patterns. And we use this time as a time to educate. Cannabis was now in the spotlight like never before, and we should all take pride in that, educating the masses about the important role that the plant has in managing stress and overall wellness. This wasn't the time that we were focusing on, selling a new gummy flavor or, talking about different aspects of our specific brand, but instead using that time to educate consumers on things like the endocannabinoid system, the unique effects of different terpenes and cannabinoids, and how cannabis can build your immune system. And as interaction at the retail locations allowed, many brands took their in-store promotion playbook online. So we did things like hosting virtual demos, showing real-world applications of how people are using products during this time. 1906 is a local Colorado brand here that is very lifestyle focused, and I really noticed them doing a good job of talking to folks in the community and showing how they're using cannabis products in their athletic pursuits or for general wellness, and it was really exciting to see that positive message spread through their outlets. And finally, we really evolved our paid media strategy. It was less about placing typical ads, talking about our products as a whole, but taking advantage of things like advertorial opportunities, different types of native advertising that's not so much shining a spotlight on our brand specifically, but about cannabis as a whole, the great things the industry is doing, and really communicating to the masses why cannabis is and was deemed an essential business. So now Laura's going to talk a little bit about some of the best practices from a retail perspective as it relates to COVID.
I think no one has been as affected, not one segment of the industry has been as affected by COVID as retail has, both positively and negatively. First, you had to change all of your protocols, and in California, you know, it's county by county, and there's a patchwork of it. Like our regulations, you had another layer of regulation on top of that that had to do with health regulations. But really, your customer-facing point, what does it say? What does your homepage look like? Does it even address the COVID changes? I actually sampled in the last week 10 different websites for Seattle dispensaries. The homepage said nothing either about COVID or Black Lives Matter. So you sound kind of oblivious if you're not in the moment. It's dominating headlines everywhere and our lives. So I'm showing an example of great communication. I'm hoping you guys can all see it, but if you go to substancemarket.com, you can see they usually have a beautiful picture of Bend, Oregon, and lots of great stuff on their homepage that's beautiful and simple. But they are flat out right there. It's an example of great communication, straight to the point, easy to order online, which they had to go to online ordering because originally they shut down and then opened up again and then curbside pickup only. So it's been all over the map. They use Dutchie, which is also based in Bend, Oregon, for their point of sale API for online ordering, and curbside pickup is what they did for the longest period of time. And now Oregon, like many other locales, have gone to mask requirements for everyone, even in the cars when you pick it up. And it's challenged a lot of employees. You've had to retrain them in de-escalation, which is not something any of us expected to happen. So Substance has actually hired 6 more persons to be able to enforce social distancing and ensure the cleaning protocols are adhered to. And for those of you who follow revenue numbers, this has really paid off. Oregon had a record sales month in May. If you look in there, it says, you know, to follow the direction of store employees. I mean, it's really on the front. This is what you have to do business with us. So there's no expectation that, you know, it's going to be business as usual. You want to go to the next slide for me? Thanks. Here's a great example of customer retention marketing in the age of COVID-19. The Leaf at El Paseo is on El Paseo Drive, which is kind of like the Rodeo Drive of the desert. So the clientele is affluent, largely retiree, and a very large LGBTQ customer base. MailChimp has a simple list for them, and what they did is they extended their delivery for free to Idlewild, which is a hippie-like rural community in the mountains near Palm Springs. It's about an hour to get there because of the windy mountain roads. It's, you know, 42 miles as the crow flies. So the convenience, especially for retirees who are living there and afraid to go out, is really smart stuff. Their minimum order keeps their average ticket margins higher, and many elderly are truly locked down. So this is a great solution to stay close to your customers who have been in your store and to expand to other ones from there. Next slide for me. Here's another example that they do. At the Leaf at El Paseo, they decided to bundle products for a party, even if it's a socially distant one or just in your own home. If you're overstocked on items, you can bundle them with other highly desirable products and discount it, and it moves their product. And their beautifully branded box makes it great for everything from a hostess gift to party favors. And the box obviously has staying power. Amy, a little later on, has a great example of swag that you can do that's timely into the moment that she'll speak to in just a little bit. But in the meantime, I want to show you something. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and roll the tape there, Brian. This is something that was put together by somebody in advertising when COVID first happened. All of the advertisers that were currently advertising, you know, they couldn't cancel their commercials that fast, and they had to scramble and get something in the moment to speak to it. But they kind of made a mistake where it's all kind of the same message all the way through. So I'll let you watch it. It's just a couple of minutes long, but it's worth seeing. You know, it's all the same piano, every single spot.
When we first opened our doors.
Since 1926.
Since 1978.
For 60 years.
For 75 years.
For over 80 years. In 90 years.
Over 100 years. Nationwide has been on your side.
Restaurants have always been there for you.
Nissan has been with you through thick and thin.
We will do what we've always done.
Take care of people.
We're people.
People, 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 people.
People, family.
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 Family. Family.
Family.
Family.
Family. Families are families. Families.
Even now.
Especially now.
Especially now.
Right now,
Now more than ever.
more than ever.
Today, more than ever.
Today, more than ever.
In times like this,
At times like these, during these difficult times,
In these troubled times,
Challenging times.
trying times,
In these times of uncertainty.
during this time of great uncertainty,
during these uncertain times,
during these uncertain times,
in uncertain times,
In uncertain times.
uncertain times,
unprecedented times,
unprecedented times.
unprecedented times.
This unprecedented moment in our history.
It's time of social distancing. While things have slowed down, as we turn more inside, while the doors may be closed,
while the distance between us has gotten bigger.
The more we stay apart, we still find ways to stay close, even when we're apart.
Even if we can't stand closer than 6 feet,
We can all stay connected to work, school, and most importantly, to each other.
there's still ways to touch each other.
all without leaving the comfort and safety of your home.
Without leaving the safety of your home.
From home.
Your home.
At home.
Home. Home. Home. Home.
Home. That's the key.
Buick and GMC are here to help. Con Edison is here to help. Here to help.
Our teams are here.
We are here.
We're here.
We're here.
Here for you.
Here for you.
We're here for you.
We're here for you.
We are here for you.
We're here for you.
We are here for you. We'll be here for you.
Runnings is here for you.
We're still here for you.
We're with you. We're part of your community.
So you can trust us.
You can count on us.
And we'll get through this. Together.
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 Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
And together.
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 Mastercard.
So you can see, it's hard to be remarkable when everybody is saying the exact same thing. Listen to your customers. Referrals are one of the best ways to go right now because everybody is ordering online for the most part. There are stores that are open in California, but people are doing more order and pickup than ever before. And in many states, that's the same way. So to be remarkable, listen to your customers, find out what they need, speak to that felt need, and also take a look at what other people are doing. Don't copy it. Make yourself remarkable. Don't do the same thing and say the same thing as everybody else, or you just kind of get blended in and wind up in a YouTube montage that makes fun of you. I'll hand it off to Amy and she'll take it from here.
Laura, I watched that commercial and I've seen it so many times, and I just wonder how much money that marketing company made on selling the same commercial to that many companies. But one of the things that I think you guys will come out of this conversation that we're having today with, if nothing else, is that it's not just what you say anymore. It's really going to be about what you do and how you prove to your customers, to your community, to your partners that, you know, we're not just paying lip service. And whether that happened during your efforts in COVID, addressing COVID and, you know, frontline workers, or, you know, more during the recent Black Lives Matter racial inequity conversations. One of the companies that I wanted to just highlight briefly from Colorado, and they're not a client, I'm not associated with Green Dot Labs, but they did an amazing thing in the very beginning of the pandemic when everyone was shut down. And they donated hundreds of quarter-ounce jars of their Black Label flower to people who were nominated as, you know, frontline workers. And maybe they were frontline workers, you know, the front lines of a retail dispensary. Maybe they were medical professionals, you know, public works people, business owners, people who have been actually really impacted by the outbreak. And the reason that this promotion, this advertising, I say in air quotes, I think was so successful was because, one, it pulled in the public. They were really able to drive up engagement. They were really able to, you know, expose their brand to new customers and to really show that they were going to put their money where their mouth is. And I know that when you're a brand and when you have actual product to give away, it's much easier to show those, kind of efforts. It's easy to give away samples or to, host kind of, private parties, even though we weren't hosting parties during the pandemic. But when you're not a brand, when you're actually a B2B company, a services company, and you don't have something to give away, it's a lot harder to come up with unique ways to kind of to get a part of that conversation. Brian, if you want to switch to the next slide. And I don't want to do too much, kind of selling, but if you guys aren't familiar with Simplify, our core product is really a software that helps licensed operators stay compliant. We stay on top of all of the regulations because none of us could grow a plant to save our lives. And so our goal is really to help, licensed operators stay compliant with all of the regulations. And of course, when COVID came out, we had to stay on top of all of those emergency regulations that were coming in. I think Colorado, Denver updated, did 4, 5, 6 different versions of their emergency regulations. So we actually wrote and did, I think we probably did half a dozen blogs in about a 6-week period of time, talking about how the regulations were changing, how they were impacting, our clients, whether they were cultivators and manufacturers or specifically retail operators. Also knowing that everyone was really nervous. Nobody knew how long this was going to last. Nobody knew what their budgets were going to look like. Were sales going to go down? Were sales going to go up? Were they going to have to lay people off? So of course, paying for, an optional software to help them maintain compliance, but was not required, was always, budgets are always of, top of mind. So for the first time, we actually gave our clients the opportunity to freeze their accounts with us without losing their history of compliance information. Rather than canceling and walking away, we gave them the opportunity to freeze their account and to still maintain that information. Additionally, very, very few people get into the cannabis industry because they love compliance. But I'll tell you guys, my team of reg affairs people and lawyers love compliance. And I just went back and did a search, and we've updated 230 sets of COVID emergency regulations since March. That's across state jurisdictions, local jurisdictions. And as an added step, we incorporated our first federal level audit content that addressed and included CDC and OSHA related COVID regulations. This was something that we hadn't done before. And honestly, it was something that a lot of our clients didn't even know they had to adhere to on top of their state and local regulations. So this was, I'm sharing this as an example of kind of how we went above and beyond and put our money where our mouth is. And while we weren't marketing, we weren't advertising, we were providing the education, the information that you guys, our clients, needed to see and to keep their businesses open. As we rolled out regulations, we kind of took over our own Instagram account and made sure that every state that we operated in knew that we had their emergency regulations available for them so that they could stay compliant throughout this time. Of course, one of the things that we did do, and we started it in April, and honestly, guys, it was before everybody and their brother was creating masks. You couldn't buy them at Target at that time. But, like everyone, our goal as marketers is to help drive bottom line. That's my responsibility. And in a way, it was an opportunity for us to get directly into our clients' hands or our potential, new business prospects' hands. And nobody was going to read another email. Nobody wanted to hear another commercial about, how we're there for you and we'll help you through, these unprecedented times. So we actually created branded masks that we sent to The majority of our retail clients, our frontline clients, our manufacturing clients, and it was a way for us to kind of get in front of them. And also the message that we sent to them was simply thank you. Thank you for being on the front lines. Thank you for continuing to put your life, your health on the line in order to make sure that your patients and your customers continue to get their medicine. If you guys know us or have seen our swag, we're always a little tongue in cheek. We're always a little, have a little fun with it. So those masks, if you can't read them, say compliant AF on them. And that's kind of our theme because, we're in compliance and it's important, but we're going to do it with a little bit of a cannabis attitude. The last note I want to say, and the reason I really want to highlight this is because the potential new clients that we did send these packages to, we actually had a conversion rate of 30% on those. And that was by bypassing traditional media, social media, email marketing. We got our message directly into their hands and showed them that we care. And so they heard our message. So that new biz conversion rate was really the kind of the icing on the cake for us, and really helped me continue to convince our C-suite that this is not the time to pull back on marketing. We may just need to look at doing it from a different perspective. So I think Janine, we're back to you, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, hi folks. So now we're going to talk about the impact of the social justice movement on cannabis, and we're specifically what our industry is doing and some of the really excellent ways it's been addressed. And I believe I'm handing it to you, Dave.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about a big change. For us, it's a monumental change for what we're doing here at Dixie. Dixie's been around for 10 years. Brand was started, with a cannabis-infused beverage. We've grown our line to over 100 SKUs, right now available in 6 different states. And as marketers, we know that a brand name is much more than a trademark or a logo or a typography. It really is something that should represent a deeper emotional connection with our consumers. And it really needs to reflect the values of our company, our employees, and what we want to represent as a brand. So Dixie's been around for 10 years. I feel that it's a pretty iconic brand in our emerging industry. But the recent conversation about racism, inequality, and justice has really provided us a whole new lens to apply that commitment of our values to our brand. And we know that the Dixie name, very often can strike pain and for a lot of folks around the country. So to mark our 10-year anniversary, we've decided to change our name. With that, we're going to be launching a updated, more contemporary visual identity to a company. And it's not going to be an easy process. It's not going to be a flip of a switch. We know that we work in a very fragmented industry, but we're starting that process now. And through Q1 of next year, we'll have the rebrand complete. And it's going to be a lot of work. I won't say that I'm not a little scared of it. Doesn't keep me up a little bit at night, but it's something we're really, really excited about. We're really, really passionate about, and can't wait to show everyone what's next. And then also I wanted to share a quick video. This was something that was released by Dixie Brands in 2016. It's a video called Pot and Prejudice. You can find it on YouTube. But it really goes to show how marijuana laws have disproportionately been enforced against communities of color. And back in 2016, we ran a campaign to promote this video and also donated sales of a limited edition elixir product, proceeds going to help combat these laws and support really all of our communities. So.
For decades, our government has classified marijuana as a Schedule I drug and imposed unjust and harsh punishments on marijuana-related convictions. For instance, in 2014, there were more than 700,000 arrests for marijuana-related offenses. And there's evidence that marijuana laws are disproportionately enforced against communities of color. These offenses don't have to be big ones. Under federal law, the sale of a single gram of marijuana is punishable by a prison sentence of up to 5 years and a fine of up to $250,000. And on top of sentencing, every state has its own set of penalties that are triggered by marijuana offenses. In 47 states, a conviction for growing a single marijuana plant results in a ban on voting. In 6 states, that ban lasts for life. In 12 states, a conviction for growing marijuana results in a lifetime ban on receiving food stamps or temporary assistance for needy families. That's a penalty that's not triggered by robbery, kidnapping, or even murder. That's right, murder. And in 38 states, a conviction for marijuana possession prevents a person from adopting a child. In 7 of those states, that ban can last for life. It's time for lawmakers to stop buying into old-fashioned mindsets. It's time people stop losing access to resources in the name of an unjust war that cannot be won. And it's time we make our voices heard. This 420 season, let's bring the cannabis community together for more than just a smoke session. Donate to the Marijuana Policy Project to work toward changing laws through activism, work toward reuniting families, and work toward ending marijuana prohibition. At Dixie, we will too. Throughout the month of April, we'll donate $15 for every case of special edition elixir sold. Let's create a world where cannabis can be seen without prejudice.
All right. And now I think Laura's going to talk a little bit about how these changes have impacted at the retail location.
Well, first, a full disclosure, dispensaries are what I do, but I'm caught in that vortex that's known as Southern California licensing. So we've been in process literally for 2.5 years to get the license. But there are a lot of great dispensaries doing a lot of great things around Black Lives Matter specifically, and the social justice and social equity movement here in California, and in many other states too, as you'll find out. I do want to make it clear too, all states have an age gate. So the websites that I'm showing you, the home pages are just beyond the age gate. So I certify I'm 21 and this is what pops out. This is actually the homepage of Soulful, which is really detailed. You know, normally you have beautiful imagery and then products, but Soulful Dispensary in Sonoma, California addresses this head on. Instead of a brand message or worse in this atmosphere, a sales pitch for products, Soulful chose to educate and provide profits of specific brands. They had over 34 brands, I believe, from Papa and Barkley down to local ones, who also wanted to contribute and not just give the platitudes of solidarity to 2 incredibly worthy nonprofits. The Last Prisoner Project, which many of you may be familiar with, that is to release all cannabis prisoners. And then the Equal Justice Initiative, which many of you may not be familiar with, and is run by my own personal hero, Brian Stevenson. He went to work in Alabama to defend death row Black inmates, many of whom were completely innocent. So he has also started the Peace and Justice Memorial based in Montgomery, Alabama, which you absolutely should go online to see. I visited it in person and I came away a different person. It documents the tens of thousands of Black people abandoned by the rule of law and lynched during Jim Crow. And that is something that rings true and sincere to supporting those who are addressing this systemic racism, not just in our nation, but in our industry alone. I mean, if we look in the mirror, we're not much better at this point. In the next slide, you'll see immediate time-sensitive messaging. It stands in solidarity with the just cause that affects the cannabis industry, and it, you know, you got to put your money into it, and that's one of the things that sets your brand apart. We've all gotten the letter from our CEO that gives platitudes, but what are you doing about it? And even more so, make sure your owners and your managers are aware of how this affects your customers and how they feel about your store or your brand or your service. But it can't be about you. You know, you really should run the message through your Black employees, your Black managers, your consultants and customers. And if you're not Black, you really have to do that, because it may sound totally and really offensive otherwise. You know, we all have our innate biases, and it's hard to really get a handle on that if you're a person of privilege, which many of us are, but not all. We'll go to the next slide. This is another great example. Weedmaps did a great job of this. Their homepage tackles it straight on. It gives great examples of places to donate and get involved. But this is where we're all going to get challenged, and rightfully so. There is not one Black person on the executive team of Weedmaps. There's a few women, several Asian Americans, no Black people. And that presents an issue because we can't encourage people to change the system if we're part of that system that needs to change and we're not changing. Weedmaps also lists Black-owned businesses, cannabis dispensaries, and it's embarrassing to look at. In the state of California, there's only 9. There's over 50 in the great state of Oklahoma. So those of you from Oklahoma, woo woo, you are way ahead of the rest of the nation and leading us on this. We have a lot to do as an industry, and we need to look inside and we need to agitate for that change inside our own houses as well. Next slide. Don't ignore this. This is a conversation that needs to happen. Consider contributing and supporting the Last Prisoner Project or local chapters of your Color of Change and Black Lives Matter, and do it with more than platitudes. Call them up, listen to what they need, see how we can change this in cannabis. And I will point, this is something that most of us don't even think about at this point, but all of us in the dispensary business our employees have to go through the police department to get permitted. Well, what are they ejecting people for? In your jurisdiction, are they declining to let you hire somebody who has a cannabis conviction? That's more than likely going to be a person of color by a factor of 9x. So have that conversation. Have that conversation with your local police department and see, they don't think they're being biased or racially biased, but that very act is an act of prejudice and is an act of social injustice, because people who are, if they're incarcerated at such a large number, then they're going to be declined employment at your place of business for the same reason. So have those conversations with your city council people or whoever does in your jurisdiction who has to do with something like that. Somebody, maybe the police, there's public relations at the police department. Have that conversation, because they don't think of themselves as being prejudiced or having racial bias, but that very regulation is an act of racial bias. And then I'm showing an example here because this is one of those evergreens. Many of you may have seen it. Some of you I know haven't. This was the Super Bowl commercial that Acreage Holdings wanted to play during the Super Bowl last year, back in the days when we had Super Bowls. But this was an ad that was so impactful that it's an evergreen. It's a message that comes through and it brings the moral high ground to what we're doing for those of you who are trying to break through. And it's a great example of messaging. The other thing is Acreage put this together very, very quickly and asked 3 of their customers to come forward. These are all actual customers and actual users. So go ahead and roll the tape so everybody can see it. Tape.
Austin would have dozens to hundreds of seizures every single day. None of the prescriptions would work. One pill almost killed our son.
I've had 3 back surgeries and I was on opioids for 15 years. It was a very dark, very depressive time in my life.
After my injury, I felt like I couldn't live with the pain, but I couldn't live with this treatment long term. It was unbearable.
I don't want to live like that anymore. Medical cannabis saved Austin's life.
Cannabis has given me my life back.
There are families in other states having to watch their children die.
I want to see my brothers and sisters who sacrificed so much for this country have access to the safest treatment possible. This really is an injustice.
It's not just unfair, it's cruel.
I cry every time I watch it. I cry every time I watch it. So those are just some ideas. I know we're on time here. I just want to make sure that you guys know that powerful media doesn't have to be just on digital too. Look to things like radio, cable TV. Curaleaf uses radio all the time. If you're frustrated by Google and Facebook and not being able to advertise there, go where no one else is fishing. Go where your share of voice is going to be much larger. Local radio is great for dispensaries, and radio stations are hurting like everyone else for advertising. So look at what that looks like. And, be remarkable. listen to your customers, and know that this is a change in our history and we have to change ourselves from within as well. I'm going to hand it over to Amy for some final thoughts here.
Sure. Thanks, Laura. So you guys, I know we kind of changed the topic and the direction of this presentation fairly last minute because we felt addressing, what our world and our industry, especially in the past few months, has been dealing with. So just a couple of high level notes. Laura actually hit on a few of them just a minute ago. And I'm not going to read all of these, but I think the most important thing to do is to start with knowing what your goal is, and then to identify the tactics that will help you achieve your goals. Don't just go in and say, I'm going to create a video, I'm going to create, an email blast, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because that's what everybody else is doing. Know what you're trying to do, and then figure out how to get that done. Start with a goal, not with a tactic. And then get creative. Laura talked about, let's look at radio, look at traditional, look at direct mail, look at things that we've done historically before the advent of everything being online and connected. It's not always as easy to track success and metrics, but sometimes if you get to be a big voice in a place that's a little more empty, it's a much more powerful conversation. And then the last thing that I want to really hit home is that anymore, especially it's been brought to light so powerfully the past few months, your lack of action, your lack of backup is no longer going to be acceptable. You have to back up what you say with true action. Understand how what you do or what you don't do will affect your brand's perception and potentially your ultimate success or failure. We've seen a lot of great brands do really great things. We've also seen a lot of brands get torn down on social media for being, very involved in the movement and jumping on, the social media kind of, virtue signaling right now, but they've done nothing to actually initiate change internally. And so that right now is really the best piece of advice that I think you guys should walk away from this conversation with. And now more than ever, it's important that you have to get involved. You have to get involved, and you have to advocate. A lot of us, are people of privilege. It was pointed out in the chat, we're talking about social equity and diversity and that kind of stuff. And we have an all white panel sitting up here. And granted, we shifted this conversation very last minute, but we have to look at that diversity representation in everything that we do, in every aspect of our lives and in every aspect of our business. So getting involved and making a change is more important now than it ever has been before. And that's really going to be the indicator of how well your brand succeeds more than any ad that you buy. So I think with that, I know we're down to 14 minutes. I know we kind of went a little bit over, but Janine, I think if we're ready to head up Q&A, unless anybody had any other last minute thoughts.
No, we certainly are, and we'll do some last minute thoughts at the end. So I think it's important to note that that with crises, there's also opportunities. There are opportunities to distinguish yourself and show yourself to be a responsible organization, and that the relationships you create now are going to last far beyond this crisis time that we find ourselves in, or this time of change. So one thing you can do is think about your objectives in terms of your company, and objectives shift during times like that. Would you all agree on the panel that you might be looking at different ones? So let me just ask you briefly, we do have some questions about advertising now. So if you have to sell a product right now, panelists, how do you do it at this time? And maybe Laura, I'll kick off with you. Would you like to answer that?
I'm always a big, Curaleaf did this too. They did direct mail. And if you're thinking about direct mail, just go have a frank conversation with your postmaster first, because the last thing you want to do is go to the expense and then find out you got a postmaster with a stick somewhere. you know, but most of them have been, yeah, sure, well, you know, it's legal in the state, we'll do it, because they're not really part of the federal government, they're separate. But direct mail, postcards, oversized, introduce them to your brand, how they can order online. You know, and you can, the post office will even help you. They will actually help you narrow it. So if you want to reach just, let's say, women between the ages of 35 and 45 for a new gummy line, you know, they can help you narrow it down in your radius if you're looking at a dispensary, or, you know, statewide if you're looking at launching a brand from a manufacturing standpoint. So that's a great way to go. And you won't have anybody say, no, we won't do it, like you do with Facebook and Google. And, you know, you can actually talk to somebody at the post office and actually get that executed. How many of your competitors are using that right now? Probably zero. So you will stand out. If you use an oversized postcard, you know, people have to look at it before they throw it away. So that's a great way if you can keep your message really short. You know, the average time span of an adult right now is 8 seconds. That's why billboards have to be really brief and things like that. So I would highly recommend that. We all default to digital because it's what we know and you can track it the best. But isn't it better to have your sales go up 40% if you can't track it entirely than not move at all if you can track it? Seriously.
So looking at some old school methods of,
methods.
marketing now's a good time to do that. And by the way, rates are lower now. There's less noise out there. It's a real opportunity. Amy, would you like to say anything about that?
No, I was just going to add on to what Laura said. One of the other questions that popped up in the chat was, or comments said that, you know, isn't direct mail the most expensive form of advertising? The most expensive form of advertising is what you pay for and get no results on. So if you, you know, if direct mail, whether it's a postcard for a coupon or it's a postcard for your brand or it's something like that, where you can track the success of it and you can track how many new customers you're bringing into your storefront or bringing into your brand, you know, it's less the how much am I paying for that direct mail piece and what is the cost of that customer acquisition? Because, you know, you may spend more for a postcard, but if you get a higher return on that, then no, it's not going to be your most expensive form of advertising. You know, I always forget the guy who said it, but it was, I know I spend, or, you know, I know that half of my advertising spend is wasted. I just don't know which half.
Right. That's David Ogilvy.
Yeah, the wasted part is, or the most expensive part is what you waste. So
we have another pretty interesting question, which is about the age gate that exists on online platforms. And the question is really about whether that also applies to educational websites or content, you know, sites or communities. Dave, do you know anything about the online age gate for, you know, education?
You know, not specifically. I have not seen age gates come up for just typical content providers or education providers. It's typically where a sale is promoted, where age gates are required. And Dixie, as a infused product supplier, that's what we do. So, but as far as I know, there's no age gate requirement for educational content.
Anybody else have any insights on that? Great. Another really interesting question is about the online ordering platforms. So since now there's, you know, you've got your, you know, your stores, which have been disrupted, the ability of bud tenders to provide recommendations and discover new products. And now and you have to drive some people in and there's a big emphasis on online ordering. Unfortunately, most of them are pretty restricted. You've got a description, you got a picture. Is there any way to maximize the value of working with online ordering platforms to be more effective?
Yeah, I can touch on that. I think that the online ordering platforms are a tactical tool to close the sale. I think that oftentimes what's most rewarding about working in marketing in cannabis is the challenge, right? You know, you're constantly seeing shut doors on typical avenues that other industries may utilize, but I don't see the online ordering platform being a brand building tool. I think it's up to the brands to really come with a strong and integrated approach and use things like more traditional media like Laura was talking about earlier, or doing what we can on social, or developing educational content to build the brands, and then use the online ordering platform as really a way to close that loop for the consumer when they're ready to make purchase.
Any other thoughts on the online, how to maximize digital online ordering?
That's where the digital pulls into your marketing, really, more than anything else. You're better off retaining at this point, because it's so hard to bring new people into stores with lockdowns and, all the protocols and stuff like that. Some people will always show up when it comes to that. But I use Dutchie, which is one of those, it's an online API for your point of sale. So if you're using Cova software or, any of the point of sale software, it sits on top of that. And there are other APIs that do the same thing too. And they tie into your inventory. So everything stays, the same, and it views the same. But I know Dutchie and some of the others, they do their own promotion as well. And they help tremendously with your SEO, because that's what they do. They're technology companies. So I think that's one of the places where you can get the SEO is ask your online people to do that. If you don't do that, if you do your own hosting and do that, it's harder to keep the inventory straight for the online ordering. So if any of the people who are listening here, any of the participants, if you have an idea, pop it in the chat and put it in there. But as I understand it, online is a very, very, very competitive space. Everybody's trying to get the sale there. So that's where your challenge is. And that's where, in my experience with our companies, going outside of those things, bring in more of the new customers, because you're getting attention in different places. The average adult gets 600 to 800 messages a day. So how do you break through? You go someplace where that's visual, or someplace that's in their car, or someplace that's in their mailbox, or someplace that's not digital, because that's where everybody's competing right now.
Right. Now, since we had to pivot, we wanted to pivot, maybe we can take a minute or two to provide any best practices or do's and don'ts about advertising in general for the folks on the call. So for example, we have a question about Facebook ad rules in regard to CBD. So sometimes you can see some ads for CBD and hemp, and sometimes you can't see it. People are getting shut down. Do you have any insights? Does anybody in this panel can speak to that? Is it a crapshoot?
I think mostly it kind of is. I think it depends on what the content is that you're serving up in the ad, how you're positioning it, as well as what the landing page that you are pointing it back to represents. So especially, on Facebook and social media, it's not just what you're saying in your ad. It's not just what's on, your Facebook profile business page. It's also where you're pointing whoever clicks on that back to. It's that type of content as well. And honestly, they keep changing what they want to do. And so it's one of those, there is a little bit of testing, and that would actually be my piece of advice for this, is if you have paid dollars and you've had success with Facebook, or you've had success with social media, as it relates to CBD and hemp, obviously, those are still shut down. They're not open to us from a cannabis perspective. But I would say that make sure that you save enough budget, save enough time to test things. A/B test messages, A/B test what you're putting out there. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket, because a lot of times, you may be humming along and things will be great, and then you're going to get shut down for no reason. So make sure you're not relying on just one avenue to spend your money and to get in front of your customers.
Right. Well, those are great questions that we got in the Q&A. So folks on the line, thank you so much for giving them to us. And now what we want to do is we're going to wrap up. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to just give a last comment and a last thought before we sign off. So let's start with you, Laura.
I would say listen to your customers, push for change, talk to your local police departments. Look at the makeup of your community, and if it is like in Atlanta, if it's half black, at least half of your executive team and half of your employees need to be Black. You know, if Native Americans are prominent where you are, hire Native Americans. It's worth getting them in, even on the entry level, and training them, because this is our world going forward. This is, you know, this is permanent change here. And if the cannabis industry is going to survive without a lot of fingers pointed at it, you know, as we all have seen, that the people who are incarcerated still are people of color, and the people who are making millions, you know, are, with all due respect, you know, older white guys. And how do we bring that social equity in? It can't just be public policy. That's going to be part of it, and it's going to be a big part of it, but it has to be us from within. Thanks.
Amy?
I would say, you know, we're, to Laura's point, we're at a really critical point in time, both from a societal perspective as well as for the cannabis industry perspective, from, you know, for the cannabis industry in general. And I would say, make sure that whatever you're doing, you're being responsible. You're being a responsible community citizen. You're being a responsible cannabis brand. Right now, you know, those check marks and those, you know, the federal lawsuits that are happening, and, you know, we're just coming out of, you know, Vapegate and all of those things. We're at a very critical time for the growth and legitimate acceptance of cannabis as an industry. And so I think that if there's anything that we can do to continue to move it forward, or that you as a brand can do, you as a company can do, it's to be responsible, and it is to be smart, and to, you know, to do what you can to help preserve and uplift the reputation of not only your brand, but the industry as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, this is a trying time for all of us in our professional lives and in our personal lives. And it's okay to, you know, take time and be quiet and self-reflect, especially from a brand or professional perspective. You don't want to just do something just to do it, or feel like you have to play a role because other brands are. It's okay to, you know I did for myself personally, and other employees did here as well, but you know, you can quiet social media, quiet some of your other advertising channels, and just take time to reflect on your values, and then make actions for moving forward.
It's funny, because I was going to say that this isn't such a time to be quiet, but I do agree with you that if you don't have something to say, definitely do be quiet while you're figuring it out.
Right.
But on the other hand, people are really receptive now, and there's platforms available to communicate on, and people want to know who they're doing business with. So to your point, Dave, it's about letting people know your values, letting know what you believe in. And I think Amy and you've all said it, it's about walking the walk. Yeah. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and I'm going to hand it back over to Brian.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, let's give a big virtual round of applause to this amazing panel and members of our awesome marketing and advertising committee. If you enjoyed today's session, why don't you raise your hand in the audience pool? I see Katie already did. I always love seeing my screen pop up with those at the end of these sessions. Awesome. Yeah, I think people enjoyed themselves. Perfect. And please do note, we're going to wrap up today's sessions with just a few upcoming announcements about NCIA and our activities and how they tie into this particular program. But before I do that, do want to know, we do have a lot of questions that have been unanswered in the Q&A section. So I do want to let everyone know that we will be addressing all of the outstanding questions either in a public-facing follow-up blog, and additionally, we're going to start a conversation in a discussion thread in our new members-only community platform, NCIA Connect. So if you are an NCIA member, head on over to the Connect platform after this session wraps up, and you can get all those burning questions answered directly by our panelists in the new community platform. Awesome. And before I do wrap things up, I do want to touch on what NCIA has done to meet the moment that we're in right now. We do understand the systemic tie to racism that is inherent in cannabis prohibition, and do recognize our position within this conversation to provide a platform to address those inequities head on. And I'm really pleased to announce, we've been posting this for about 2 weeks, so this isn't the first announcement, but I'm really pleased to announce for all of you all that might have missed it over the last 2 weeks, the announcement of NCIA's Equity Scholarship Program. This awesome video that our marketing team put together will do a much better job of explaining it than me. So let's sit back and watch this great 60-second video.
I need y'all to understand that being here for all Black people, Black Lives Matter means all, every single Black life matters.
Yeah, awesome. So what this scholarship program entails, all equity applicants across the nation are able to apply for this 1 year of free NCIA membership program. That also will provide you exclusive access to our annual conferences and trade shows once we are hopefully hosting those again in early 2021. And then additionally, also link you into a mentor network. I do know there was a few people that were specifically expressing that interest inside the chat window. So I'm really excited to announce this program and tell you all more about it. We do need not only applicants to apply, so please do spread this around among your networks, but we also do need sponsorship support for the program. So if supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to you all, please do reach out to the head of this program, Tahir Johnson. He's also the committee liaison with our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee internally as well. So please do reach out to him if you have any questions about applying or supporting the success of this really important program that we're really happy to have rolled out these past few weeks. And then additionally, I really do hope that you all will continue your engagement with NCIA's educational content. We have a specific social equity focused panel that's going to be coming up next Wednesday, July 15th. We'll be presenting a session conducted by members of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee and featuring a number of guests from the Chicago faith community as well. Their conversation will cover what has taken Illinois so long to announce its first round of social equity license winners, and if the program is making the impact it set out to in communities disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. You'll be able to find out directly from stakeholders in Illinois how the program has or hasn't been working and learn how the failings and successes in Illinois thus far impact other social equity programs around the nation. As with today's session, this webinar is free for both NCIA members to attend as well as non-members to attend. So if you haven't already, please head to NCIA's website to sign up today and invite as many of your colleagues who might be interested as well. And then additionally, I did want to mention, I'm going to launch a poll alongside with this. I saw at the beginning of the presentation that we had about a 50-50% split among the audience of people who were NCIA members and were not NCIA members. I do want to stress to you that becoming an NCIA member is the first step outside of participating in these public-facing events and educational content to supporting our vital mission. Right now, we are among all of the other trade associations across the world, really heavily dependent upon the revenue from in-person trade shows and events. And as you all can imagine, we're really hurting monetarily. We have done everything we can to pivot and to take the amazing programs and content that you've come to rely on at our in-person events and reconvert that digitally alongside the amazing digital marketing opportunities that we already push out and provide on a routine basis. So if you are not already an NCIA member, I would highly consider that you join NCIA following this session. You'll be directed to an attendee survey where you can learn more about that. And if you are an NCIA member, I would highly encourage you all to take your engagement and involvement with NCIA to the next level through sponsorship. As this conversation focused on directly, we're all feeling the pinch from the lack of in-person exposure and marketing right now. And associating your brand with our digital content and platforms is a fantastic way to get real ROI and to really push your brand and content out to the world right now when we can't all be meeting face to face. Our sponsorship opportunities start as low as $600 and go up the scale of being able to provide access and something as small as our industry newsletter or our website, or to even put on an entire sponsored content webinar, like I know a number of you all participated in, put on by the Cannabis Consortium this past week underneath of our Service Solutions series of Industry Essentials webinars. So if you want to learn more about sponsoring, thank you for participating in this poll. We'll be following up with all of you all that participated in the poll to tell you more about NCIA membership and all of these awesome sponsorship opportunities that we have. All right, perfect. So with that, we want to wrap things up officially. I want to encourage everybody to give another big virtual round of applause to all of these amazing panelists today. They've really taken their involvement and engagement with NCIA to the next level by participating in our committees over this past term. As all of them did mention at the beginning of the session, we are currently in the committee application period for the upcoming term. So if you are an NCIA member, applying for a committee is the best way to really take your volunteer participation with NCIA to the next level, helping us push out vital content and resources to our network, and also expand and get exposure for your brand across our network of established business owners across the US. And with that, I do want to thank all of the NCIA members that have participated in today's session and all of our panelists by ending today's session with this end of event credit sequence. So stick around for the next 60 seconds. If you see your NCIA member business company in this event credit sequence, give yourself a little shout out in the chat room window. And I look forward to seeing you all again for another NCIA Industry Essentials webinar taking place next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all again. Enjoy your week, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.